One of the things about our show is it's going to be unique.
You are what you do. You can say any amount of things that you want to say, but what you do is what everybody sees.
People are like, oh, I'm just going to JV it. Like, it's just JV it. Like, what the hell does that mean?
I cannot tell you how excited I am to hang out with you guys today, so thank you so much.
Well, then that end buyer could come back and say, well, I didn't fully understand that it was subject to.
That's not a thing. Like, the SEC has thought of all of these things. They've been here since 1932.
And you can do what you want with your property.
Buyers have time, they have negotiating power, they have options.
Oh my gosh, I am blown away by your inexperience, and they've been in business 20 years.
And that includes things other people put on your property, right? It's your property to be okay. Suddenly, Cousin Jimmy's in a lawsuit.
Innovation is replacing one contract or one obligation with another.
Out with the old, in with the new.
Yes.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to the show. Today, we're talking about artificial intelligence and real estate. I'm Andy Fowler, and I'm here with Fowler St. Clair. If you're new to the show, make sure to give us a like. You can subscribe to our channels. You can find us on Facebook. You can find us on Twitter, now known as X. And you can find us on YouTube. Our handle is @InRemPodcast. That's @InRemPodcast. You can also download an audio version of the podcast. You can find that on Spotify. And you can find that on Apple. So go there, go ahead and download it. We'd really appreciate it. Leave us a review. With that, we're going to turn it over to Sean, who has our legal update.
Thank you, Andy. So my legal update today is a discussion on anti-deficiency statutes and how they apply to transactions where properties either being purchased or sold subject to the existing loans. So Arizona is one of about a handful of states that have anti-deficiency statutes. And what anti-deficiency statutes state is that if you're dealing with residential property, the lender is limited on its ability to pursue your other assets to recover its loan balance. So in Arizona, if a property is 2.5 acres or less, limited to and utilized as a single one-family or two-family dwelling, then the anti-deficiency statutes apply, and a lender who provides financing for the purposes of purchasing real estate or that type of real estate may never pursue the borrower's other assets to recover its loan balance. Instead, the lender is relegated to basically pursuing the property, and whatever the property can render, then at that point, that's what the lender can recover. They can't not look to the borrower's bank accounts, their vehicles, their other real estate. They're simply looking to the real estate that was pledged for that loan. And if that real estate is sufficient to pay off the loan, great. If it isn't, then the lender is basically out of luck. So what does that mean for subject to transactions? Well, first, on the acquisition, understand that you're generally going to be dealing with a purchase money loan or a first position loan on this type of residential real estate. And so the seller is generally going to be concerned about still being on the loan, right? Oh, I'm still on the loan and I'm still exposed. Well, in Arizona, not really. You're not exposed financially for that loan because of the anti-deficiency statutes. Instead, really the harm is on your credit. But other than that, there really is no financial risk or financial exposure for a seller in a subject to transaction, because the lender is basically relegated to the property and not the seller's other assets. So that's number one. Number two is on the disposition side of the transaction. So you purchase a property subject to, or you're an investor and you've purchased a property by, obtaining your own financing, but then you're going to want to sell the property on a wrap or subject to a third-party buyer. And you may even be willing to carry a portion of that transaction. So you're going to provide basically a full wrap note. So you're going to, if you're the outstanding existing loan on the property is $500 and you're going to sell the property for $7, and you're going to finance basically, $200,000 of that or maybe you're going to even do an increase in your interest rate from what exists on the current loan. So let's say you're going to say, okay, well, I owe 500,000. That lien's going to remain, and now I'm going to sell it for 700,000. But I'm going to do one note at 8% interest, a $700,000 note, 8% interest, 10% interest, whatever the amount may be. So we're going to do a seller carryback financing wrap transaction, and then we're going to have a servicer, and that buyer is going to pay on this loan. Well, what happens if the buyer defaults on that $700,000 note? Well, in that case, you can foreclose, but what happens if the property is depreciated in the meantime and you foreclose and you can only obtain, say, $600,000 from the sale of that property and you're short $100,000? What's your remedy? Well, unfortunately, that $700,000 loan that was made to that buyer was a purchase money loan. Even though the existing loan remains and you were taking basically a second position note on the property, it's still purchase money because you basically were doing a seller carry for a full 700,000. In that case, you're out. Now, there are exceptions to anti-deficiency statute rules, and I'm not going to get into them too much other than to say that there is a way around it by having the buyer purchase it in the name of an LLC, and then having personal guarantees from the buyer, which waives the rights under the anti-deficiency statutes in those personal guarantees. So there's a possible way around it, but just keep in mind that if you do more of a standard, hey, individual buyer purchasing it, you're going to do a seller carry so that they can get into the property. Know that basically your risk is that the property cannot be sold at a foreclosure if they stop paying, and you don't have a right to recover the deficiency balance. So it's very important to understand and be familiar with our anti-deficiency statutes, whether you're acquiring or selling properties subject to or on any type of seller carryback financing.
All right. Thank you, Sean, for the legal update. A couple brief announcements before we get into our topic today. The Creative Finance Collective. You might have noticed that in the last couple of weeks we haven't aired it. We have decided to move the time in the day. So the Creative Finance Collective now will be every Tuesday. So today, if you're watching the show live, today at 3 o'clock Arizona time, and in other states at that respective time. But we're going to be doing it at 3 o'clock Arizona time. It is live. So what is the Creative Finance Collective, if you're learning about that for the first time? It is a collection, it's a membership of attorneys or professionals in the creative finance space throughout the country from a variety of different jurisdictions who basically spend time in the area of creative finance. So they know a little bit about it. What we found is there's really only a handful of these folks throughout the country. But as part of the collective, we've got attorneys from Texas, from Ohio, from Florida, from Arizona, from California. So on any given week on the collective, we may have attorneys from a variety of different jurisdictions. We use it as a chance as attorneys to talk through and find out what each other is doing with respect to creative finance, how we can make our product better. But we also use it as an opportunity to you, the listener, to answer questions. We basically make ourselves available for the entire hour to questions that you might have about creative finance, what that looks like, legally speaking, from a variety of jurisdictions. So make sure to join us every Tuesday, 3 p.m. It'll be this afternoon. Be with us. We're taking questions throughout the entire time. Don't lose that opportunity. If you can't make it, it will be on YouTube, Facebook, and X as well. You'll be able to watch it after the fact. But to have an opportunity to interact and engage with attorneys from all over the place, you're going to need to be there live. So make sure to join us 3 p.m., the Creative Finance Collective, every Tuesday. With that, we are going to take questions today. We're talking about artificial intelligence. So if you have questions, make sure to post them. I'm going to turn it over to Mayu, who can give you instructions on how to go about doing that.
Thank you, Andy. And good morning, everyone. You're watching the InRem podcast live. As always, thank you for watching and joining us today and supporting us. One thing we like to do on the podcast is we take in your questions. Andy, Sean, and our guests want to hear from you. So at the end of the show, we take the last 10 to 15 minutes to answer any questions you have related to today's topic. Today, we're talking about artificial intelligence, and I will be monitoring the chat for your questions. So if you're watching us, whether whether it's from our YouTube or Facebook Live. Just drop your question in the chat and we'll try to get to all of them at the end of the show. So I'll turn it back to you, Andy. Let's get into today's topic.
All right. Thank you, Mayu. With that, let's get into it. We're talking about artificial intelligence and real estate. And with us to discuss that topic is Pace Morby. Pace, thanks so much for joining us.
Hey guys, how's it going? I appreciate you both.
Yeah, appreciate you being with us. So you've been on our show with us before. You're kind of prolific on YouTube. You're an investor, an entrepreneur, and mentor. I'm
just a fan of you guys. That's the only thing I got to say. I'm a big fan of both you guys. Sean is one of my superheroes. He is such a big, prolific character in our communities, in Gator, in Subto. He has changed the course of where our community is going, and what you guys are putting in is beyond appreciated. And I'm so grateful for having the opportunity to hang out with you guys anytime. I'll tell you guys this, okay? Sean St. Clair is not only my attorney, but he's become a friend of mine. Every time I get an invoice from this man, I cannot wait to pay it. It is the best money I'll ever spend because I know what these guys bring to the table. And the fact that Sean's sitting over here talking about anti-deficiency statutes, I'm sitting here taking notes. You guys definitely tuned into the right show.
Well, thank you, Pace. That's kind.
Yeah. You've heard it here first. You too can get an invoice from Sean.
Yes, yes.
Even with that ringing endorsement, I don't want any of Sean.
You know what's fun though? I get to hang out with Sean. Sean hangs out more often with Molly, my head of operations, but I got to hang out with him the other day. It was really fun. We were on a call. I'm negotiating 2 RV parks currently. I won't say the state because it might tip some people off, but it's interesting. There's a broker involved in this deal that has been in the business 15 years that does not understand what a contract for deed is. And he's getting paid a significant amount of money to represent the client. I mean, hundreds of thousands of dollars. And it's just so fun feeling as if you are Superman in real estate because you know the really, really important information, like what you guys are talking about in the Creative Collective. Very few people know what we know. And that gives you the cutting edge. That gives you the ability to go in and get deals done that other people can't. I mean, you can out edge a broker or somebody that's been doing this 15, 25 years just because you understand creative finance. And it's so fun to be able to watch Sean on these Zooms and be on these Zooms with Sean, one of my superheroes in my mind. So thanks again. I appreciate you guys.
Yeah, again, thanks for being with us. So Sean and I we're attorneys and we do the best that we can to understand and help our clients navigate the law. But when it comes to technology and things like artificial intelligence, we're kind of newbies and rookies, but we know enough to know that it's coming and we have to be ready for it. And we know that you're in the space looking at this from a mentor perspective, an investor perspective. So let's get in and talk about artificial intelligence. And I guess let's focus on, as we move through this discussion, let's start with how it's currently being used. And I don't necessarily mean effectively or ineffectively, and we can get into that as well. But in what areas are you seeing artificial intelligence in a meaningful way being used currently right now in this space?
What a great question, because there's so many people that are talking about AI, but it's not really AI, right? It's like artificial intelligence. I call it AAI. And it's really not actual artificial intelligence, and it's not really meaningful. So it depends on who we're talking to, right? Because if I'm talking to an agent or I'm talking to somebody that's trying to get their word out, maybe somebody that's doing a podcast as a real estate investor, and they're trying to market themselves so they can get more deals or more private money lenders, what have you, there's a plethora of things that you should be using. From editing tools, you know, we've got like beautiful.ai, all the way from the bottom of the barrel, logo.com. If you go to logo.com, you'll save so much money. Just go to logo.com and you'll get 50 ideas of a logo. Then you hand it back to beautiful.ai and go, I like this logo for these reasons and not for these reasons. And in 15 seconds, it'll spit out things that you never even thought were possible. Meanwhile, I'm over here with a graphic designer waiting 4 months for them to return back on a $3,000 invoice, one logo they promised me 3 weeks ago, right? Like there's thousands of those types of applications going on right now. And that does apply to real estate. How does that apply to real estate? Is because I'm trying to market myself. I'm trying to get myself out there. But in terms of what most people want to think about in real estate investing is, I would say, lead generation, lead nurturing, and then also closing deals. So I'll tell you what we're currently looking at and what I see all the time. So generating leads. the thing that has come onto the scene the fastest has been callers that there's a company that came out about a year and 1 month ago, and they've gotten better and better and better. What it is they can broadcast to thousands of people per hour, leave either voice memos, text messages, or actually get these people on phone calls. Now, whether they're breaking laws or not, that's not what I'm going to tell you about. We're not going to talk about the solicitation laws and any of that kind of stuff.
Sure.
But it's being used regardless of what the laws are and what the laws are not. And what's happening is these voices that are being broadcast to generate leads. So they're calling foreclosure sellers that are in foreclosure. That has a lot to do with anti-deficiency statutes, because if I get a deal under contract subject to, and a seller says to me, well, I'm about to get under contract, and the seller says, well, I'm worried about the obligation of this loan staying on, me having the responsibility of this loan and it coming back on me if you fail. Well, now I can plug into AI and say, well, here's the appropriate answer, and here's conversations I've had in the past, and it can navigate. I think within 1 year, the lead generation models that are out right now, in 1 year, will be able to navigate 90% of all lead generation that needs to be done in real estate. Right now, it's being done via text. There's a couple of people that came out with something that uses Go High Level as their backbone. Go High Level, a lot of people know Go High Level. It's just a software platform. It's not AI. But what happens is they go, all right, I'm going to spend 1,000 hours this year, 3 hours a day, creating a map of what every conversation needs and how to navigate this, that, or the other. That's not AI. That's mapping and spitting out an answer based on what if they say this, then I say that. That's not AI. That's just called technology, right? But in the last 3 weeks, I have seen new technology come out. Somebody actually asked me to invest. It's insane. It's actual AI. It identifies based on somebody's voice where their phone number is. It can identify what religion they are, how old they are. It can identify their the inclination of whether they want to be on a longer phone call or shorter phone call just by the tone of their voice, which I'm going to tell you, as somebody who closes real estate deals and calls sellers frequently, or that was the bread and butter of my business for a very long time, it took me thousands of hours to gain that skill. And even with that skill, I get it wrong sometimes. Like, oh, dang it, I shouldn't have brought up football, this person. They're from the Midwest. I thought they were going to love potatoes. I thought they were going to love God. I thought they were going to love, football on Sundays and Mondays. I'm going to bring those things up to build rapport, but then I get it wrong. You listen to the AI having conversations with these people, and it is pinpointing with like 99% accuracy how these people want the conversation to go, what their objections are going to be. So now the AI is starting to come up with the objections before the objection actually is there. It is absolutely crazy. And they're launching that, I think, in about 60 days. They let me see it. They've already raised their first seed fund of like $3 million. It's active. It's generating leads and closing deals. And it's got to a point where these human beings, bless their hearts, there is like 80% of our population, in my opinion, that's not even using Google properly or the internet to find their answers. The people who are not using ChatGPT, the people who are not using Google whatsoever, they have no idea that this is not a human being on the other side. And at the beginning, here's what happened. Sorry to go on a rant because I'm excited about this. It's crazy what's happening. The person, this is the craziest thing. If it's a woman that picks up the phone, a man's voice responds. If it's a man that answers the phone, it's a woman that responds. They can identify sex, gender, age, all religious, everything they can identify just by how somebody says hello. That is crazy.
Now, Pace, the first thing I think about this goes back to something you said in your explanation here, which is you've spent thousands of hours at being good at this. I mean, salesmanship or just talking to somebody effectively on a phone call is a finely honed craft that it can't be learned overnight. And those that are good at it are going to reap the rewards. To what extent, if AI in lead generation is as effective as it seems that it can be, and as you seem to suggest that it can be, how much is that going to be a leveling of the playing field for investors out there in terms of sales technique? Or is it still going to be important to really hone that to close the deal? What do you think that's going to look like?
I think that you could make two different arguments. Okay. Argument number one is that it will level the playing field in a great way because people that have no experience can literally go within 5 clicks of a button, go, I want to choose Arizona. I want to go after foreclosures, and I want you to call them X amount of times and follow up until I can set an appointment. It's going to remove the hardest part of real estate investing, which is, in my opinion, getting started on generating leads and nurturing those leads long-term, because we found over the last several years, 8-9 years of doing cold calling and nurturing with sellers, 70% of our deals come from 13 follow-ups or more. So imagine you remove all of the lead gen and the nurturing of all of that. Now, on the other side of the argument is that the people who are good at actually having conversations with sellers, like myself, I now can double down on the act of being on the phone at the tail end when it's the most critical, getting them to sign the contract and overcoming the objections that other people or building true rapport. Because now think about this. The people who will dominate in this, because ultimately everybody will start using this within 24 months, 36 months, 48 months. People will start catching on, as they always do, right? And you want to get ahead of it as much as possible. You want to grab as much gold as you possibly can, but at some point, people all catch on. So does it really level the playing field? Maybe for a while. Where it doesn't level the playing field is people like myself get to double down on my craft of building true rapport. Because if there's 15 people utilizing AI on that one seller in foreclosure, the person, me, that can actually overcome and build true rapport will beat out the other 15 people because I'm so good at answering the phone call. So this is how it works. AI generates the lead. Okay. Somebody doesn't answer. Somebody doesn't answer. Somebody doesn't answer. Somebody doesn't answer. They keep calling. And it required zero willpower from a human being other than clicking a button. That is the hardest part of real estate investing, is the willpower of picking up that first weight to do your first rep. That is the hardest part of real estate. So if you can remove the hardest part of real estate, it levels the playing field. Then the next thing is seller gets on the phone, says, yeah, this is what I'm looking for. This is what's going on. And if the AI can nurture that lead to a point where they're actually ready to have a conversation with somebody, perfect, levels the playing field, right? Newbies don't have to worry about this. But then when it comes time to closing that deal and it requires somebody like me, that's where somebody like me, doesn't matter how level the playing field is. That last 1 yard right in front of the end zone is where you make your freaking touchdown. And that's where I'll be living my entire life, play after play after play, just rushing that last 1 yard into the end zone. So I think on the other argument is that it will hurt people that are not using this in a big way.
Right. Because you've basically have honed your craft to be at that 1 yard line and push it across. But you have the newbie coming in who is like, oh, I'm going to push a button, do AI. And all of a sudden it comes to them and they're like, okay, go that 1 yard, push it through. And they're like, how do I do that? Right. I mean, they're lost. So
Yeah.
What would you suggest though, for as AI, continues to expand within, the real estate community, for a newbie coming in, how would you suggest that they train themselves and be confident to the point where they can push it through from that 1 yard line into the end zone?
I would say the most important document that Sean St. Clair has not only written for our community, but also recrafted and rehoned as we've grown as a community is our JV agreement, our joint venture agreement. And so what I would be doing is going into my free Facebook group, or Sean has a great free Facebook group as well. And I would go in and partner with people who have experience at that 1 yard line of closing the actual deal and overcoming the real objections. Because here's the challenging part that AI is not going to get for the next couple of years. I can tell you the majority of what goes on. Sean Sean witnesses this all the time, but Sean was on a Zoom with me the other day where the seller, their broker, my head of ops, Sean, and their attorney was all on a Zoom. A face Zoom. We are all on a Zoom. which is also the disadvantage that AI has right now, is if you want to talk to real people, AI is going to get obliterated by people go, let's just get all on a Zoom right now. How is AI going to be able to do that? I don't think we'll be there for 3 years or so, but it will get there. But on this call, this is probably the 15th touch point on this deal. Okay. We're buying this big creative finance deal, nearly $7 million purchase, taking over an SBA loan subject to, and a lot of seller finance, very low amount of money down. It's a great deal for us. And the seller says, can I tell you why I want to do this? Because nobody's ever asked me why I want to do this. I want to tell you my motivation. And my reply was, please, because your broker has not explained any of that to us, because I'm going to be honest, your broker probably doesn't care. So why do I bring that up? I bring that up is because the people who win in this industry are the ones who truly understand what the seller's going through on an emotional level and a human being level. Oh, you're going through a divorce. That must be tough. Let me counteract that by providing this benefit or this timeline, or let's do a holdback where you can live in the property for a month while you find a new place, and provide creative alternatives to just let's close a deal, right? AI is not there yet. And so if I'm a newbie, there's thousands of those iterations, thousands of those conversations that we have with sellers where the seller has an emotional motivation. They have an emotional thing that is going on, and they have an emotional thing that needs to be overcame. And so that comes with experience. So the best thing you can do as a newbie is go find those people that have been in the business for a couple of years, people in our community, and you go to them and say, if I can bring these opportunities to you, can we JV or joint venture on these so I can watch you make that 1 yard push into the touchdown, which is more important than the previous 99 yards. That would be my suggestion.
So let's jump off from there in talking with other professionals and mentors and things like that. Advertising and marketing's, of course, a big area in AI, and you can argue the lead generation obviously is part of that. But in terms of marketing, so much of real estate, and we've come to this time and time again with real estate professionals, it's all about find good mentors, find good people that know what they're doing, learn from them, go to marketing events, shake hands, meet these people, and everything else. To what extent will AI attempt to depersonify, I guess I'm just making up words here, but there's a sense that the relationship aspect of AI is like, well, now a computer's doing this for us. To what extent are there products out there that are making those connections between mentor and mentee or in social media easier? Or is that an area that AI is destined for a big fail because you can't really have anything other than a real personal relationship and trying to find mentors and trying to find somebody to JV with, for instance?
Yeah. I mean, we are a communal animal, right? We always have ran in packs. We're not meant to be by ourselves. That's how we were crafted. Our heavenly Father made us this way, which is amazing. And so I look at the haves and the have-nots, right? The haves, the people that understand how to utilize AI, what they'll do is get rid of the mundane, the tedious, so they can expand on their communal experience, meaning connecting with people more because they have more time to do so. The other people, they'll rely entirely on the old ways of doing things, picking up the phone, cold calling, et cetera, and it will keep them away from those high-level relationships. It's not AI that's going to replace us. It's the people that know how to use AI that will replace us and outpace us. And so for me, what I want to do is I want to connect with those people more and more and more. Again, as a communal animal, I mean, we have people in our collective communities that have met each other, gotten married, and have children. And they go, look, I've bought 30 rentals in 24 months, but the greatest thing that I got was the connection with other human beings, including, most significantly, my wife and my child that came from being in this. That is what we are meant to do. And at the end of the day, do real estate investors actually want to own real estate? Like, really think about this. I don't think anybody really wants to own real estate. I think what everybody wants is freedom from worry, and they want to connect with their family and their loved ones more often. And financial freedom is a way for them to do that. So AI, in my opinion, for the smart people, will only expand your capabilities of connecting with each other more and more. And I don't think anything without a heartbeat is going to be able to trump that. Now, I am worried about other things. Like, if you really think about things in the future of 20 years, are people going to be living in shanty shacks, micro little houses because we don't care about ever leaving our house? I'm going to find the laziest way to live my life. I think that there will be a significant portion of our population that will be doing that. And so I look at my big rental properties, my 5-bed, 4-bath rental property. It's like, do I want to own these in 20 years, or do I want to downsize to these little teeny mobile homes that are affordable housing? Because at the end of the day, are we going to have basic basic government paychecks going to all of these people in the United States? Those things really scare me. But what does not scare me is AI ever removing the communal element of real estate investing and hanging out with each other.
Well, I like that a lot. I don't honestly, I don't think enough people focus on that. It's a lot of it's the doom and gloom, but this idea that if you utilize it correctly, this could actually give you a lot more time to do the things that are important, right? To connect with your family, to connect with your friends.
Or like I look at Sean. I've known Sean for years, and I look at what he does with his free time. He travels across the continents and goes and does charity work. And so if he's like, think about this from an attorney standpoint. This is interesting. Somebody told me a couple of days ago that at some point in 10 years, if you are an attorney or a doctor and you diagnose a disease or give somebody consulting on their legal matters without consulting artificial intelligence, it will be deemed as malpractice. Think about that. That is where we're going, because think about doctors. There's 2,000 medical journals written every single day. How can any one human being rely on that, right? This is new information, new technology, new medicine, new studies, new everything. Same thing with being an attorney. So I think at some point, smart attorneys, smart doctors, smart everybody will go, you know what? I do want to do charity work more often. I do want to be with my wife more often. I'm okay replacing some of the mundane and tedious work by just relying on AI to do those things for me, so I can actually be more of a human than I was able to do in my prior years, right? Like, think about how many more charity events you guys could do. How many more date nights could we do? Even today, I found myself, ironically, I was out jogging and somebody on Instagram was like, how are you jogging? Like, how do you have time to do this? I go, well, I've got AI editing my videos, AI putting my things up, posting this, creating my descriptions, doing this, doing that, doing this. And then and they're like, oh, so you just fired all your employees? I'm like, no, I elevated my employees to do more important work without having a significant jump in my payroll. I'm not removing people. I'm elevating my people. And then I'm telling them to go be more human in their free time. And they go, well, are your people working 40 hours a week? I go, I sure hope not. I hope that they're accomplishing 60 hours worth of work a week utilizing AI in 30 hours or 25 hours so they can be happier with their work-life balance. And so, again, I think AI is here to make it so we can be more human rather than just fill our time with more and more work.
So Pace, like all technology, it gets better with time, or a lot of it anyway, gets better with time. It's maybe not all on point just yet. I'm curious, what pain points have you experienced in innovating with AI, seeing if it works? What's not quite there just yet in the real estate industry?
Creative finance contracts. Think about this, right? We in the creative finance space are spoiled by a couple of things. Number one, we're spoiled because we have this superpower that other real estate investors don't have, or other real estate closing attorneys don't have, other escrow officers don't have this amazing knowledge that the 1% of the 1% possess, is that it's very rare for a Sean St. Clair or a Pace Morby to walk into a transaction and not know how to solve that problem, okay? The information about creative finance is not as widely spread on the internet. Therefore, ChatGPT or other AI cannot pull from that data to give quality data points. So for example, right, if Sean helps me negotiate and works on a lot of our big deals. Sean has to look at the nuance of the seller. He has to look at the nuance of the buyer. He has to look at maybe the tax implications or the privacy things that the sellers are worried about. Maybe a trust is involved. Those don't really exist in the traditional real estate space. It's like, okay, buyer wants to buy this and seller wants to do this, and there's an inspection. It's very rudimentary. It's very cookie cutter for the most part. In the creative finance realm, when we're like, all right, let's create a contract that will make sense that I don't have to have an attorney involved, good luck. It's not going to happen anytime soon. And I think that that's a good thing. I think that gives us an upper hand on the world trying to create AI around creative finance. It's not going to happen for us. We are the caboose, I say. This train is moving forward, but the great thing is creative finance is at the very tail end, the caboose. It's the least painful situation. Most people are trying to adopt it in traditional real estate right now, adopting it into contracts. And then what they do, this is interesting. Somebody just sent over, Sean just created a lease option purchase for me to buy a big property up in Montana. I didn't read it because that's why Sean does the thing. And that's why I love working with him. He did the thing and he sends it to Molly. Molly sends it to the client. This is what the client did. The seller. He took the contract, he put it into ChatGPT and he says, hey, ChatGPT, how does this contract protect the seller? And how does this contract protect the buyer? And in 45 seconds, it gave him a bunch of answers. And he goes, I'm going to send that to my attorney. I go, why did you not? I sent him a text. I go, why didn't you just send the contract to the attorney? He goes, because it's the difference of $2,000 versus $400. So like those things on regular transactions are going to be okay. And it's going to be accelerated. But when you get to creative finance, you're going to have it. I think, again, the cream will rise to the top. The smart real estate attorneys will dominate the space because they know how to think outside the box. And ChatGPT is basically that box, if that makes sense. So contracts has been really hard. I don't think we even want to play around with it for a couple of years. We tried it for 6 months, and there's easier, lower hanging fruit to handle. Things that are a lower lift, less of a lift. Lead generation is the easiest one. And I'm going to tell you right now, I listen to some of the callers that are making these calls or the text messages that are coming in. I'm like, I can tell that's a robot. But the human being, the seller on the other phone, has no clue. The agent has no clue. And there's things that these lead gens are doing right now that they start the call off and going, hey, I'm so sorry. I'm up in the mountains, so my cell phone reception is a little bit laggy. So if it lags, I apologize in advance. That's the first thing they say. These humans are easy to manipulate. Okay. And so I think AI is going to continue to dominate that until it's perfected. And then creative finance contracts will be the tail end caboose of the whole entire solution.
What about on the due diligence side? Are there technologies you're using, or do you think are coming that will help assist learning about the property, understanding, the past title history?
I mean, we all look at this, right? And when we go to a title company, we open up title and we pay for a title poll or a title search. Then we're paying for title insurance. And if you understand what title insurance is, I own some title companies. It's a great scam. It's an amazing scam. It's a legalized scam. And what it is I'm going to charge you, the buyer of this real estate, an insurance policy to ensure the fact that I did my job that you also paid me for separately on this invoice. It's basically like if I go to Costco and I'm going out of the door, and the manager of the store at Costco comes up to me. I've got my cart. He comes up to me and goes, hey, just so you know, my cashier might have missed something on your cart. And if my cashier missed something on your cart and you walk out that door, you're going to go to prison. But I'll charge you Costco insurance just to make sure nobody messed up on my staff so that you can be sure that you can walk through that door without any problems whatsoever. Does that sound like something that we as human beings would do at Costco? Or I'd be like, throw up the middle finger at that dude and go, what are you talking about, bro? I just bought $700 of groceries from your cashier. If they miss something on the cart, that's their freaking problem. Title insurance is that big of a scam. So I look at that and I'm like, why is that system so antiquated? Why is it the deed transfer and the history of the records and all of these things are so antiquated? I think that is such a major problem, and it's going to be the largest, lowest hanging fruit that somebody's got to solve in the next 5 years. I think title insurance in 10 years will not be a thing. I think it will go away. Somebody will come out with a way that I can meet Sean St. Clair in the grocery store and go, hey, Sean, I know you're selling your house. I saw your for sale sign. How about we just do a deal right here? And I can go phone to phone. I can transfer his deed from him to me. I think the technology will exist in less than 10 years to allow us to do that.
Yeah. So in that case, you don't even need escrow agents. And in fact, Andy knows more about this than I do, but you even have the ability to do virtual transactions and virtual escrows using the blockchain.
Right.
And, those are secure, more secure than even going through, escrow of an actual, physical escrow office to do it. I think there's a lot of professions that we might see coming to an end with AI. Escrow agents maybe being one of them. What about real estate agents?
Oh my gosh. I'm sorry, real estate agents. Open Door saw this 12 years ago. They looked at the real estate agents and they go, man, these real estate agents, this is my opinion. I'm not a licensed agent, so don't take this on Sean and his partners at all. But I'm telling you, I have very little respect for the typical real estate agent. They don't bring a lot to the transaction. They hold things up. Sellers are constantly frustrated with them. And you know what's funny is who dislikes real estate agents the most? Other real estate agents. They don't even like working with each other. They bicker and they fight and they tear these transactions up. Meanwhile, the buyer and the seller just want to get a deal done. And so I think the AI technology is going to remove a lot of the paperwork, the paper pushing, the due diligence, the making sure the contracts are clean and all of those types of things. And they're still going to need an advisor. They're still going to need somebody that steps into the transaction and goes, all right, let me make sure you understand what's been given to you. Let me walk you through the points. Let me walk you through the thing. I think that every part of real estate is going to change. Now, the 1% of real estate agents are phenomenal, because what are real estate agents at the end of the day? They are therapists. I'm sorry. I'm sure even real estate, I'm sure even attorneys feel this to a certain degree. Like, I don't know why I'm your therapist, but fine, I'm going to give you some therapy here. Here's why you should do the deal, and here's why you shouldn't, and da-da-da-da-da. Real estate agents spend more time consulting, consoling, and nurturing their clients than they actually do talking about real estate, right? This is a big decision for them. And so I think what real estate agents' role is going to turn into is more of a nurturing role of, hey, you are making a good decision. This is a good deal because of da-da-da-da. And they'll be basically that voice in their ear. But all of the minutia of getting under contract, inspection periods, clearing title, all of those things that we see that take weeks. I mean, how many times have you guys been in real estate transactions and you're like, why have we not gotten clear title yet? Why are we 3 weeks into an open transaction and nobody's even ordered an inspection? I think transaction coordinators are going to have a hard time in the future as well, because transaction coordinators right now are babysitters over agents, babysitters over escrow officers, babysitters over the mortgage company and getting payoffs. I think the blockchain is going to remove a lot of these jobs or amplify the people that use the technology. It's one or the other.
So speaking of babysitters, let's talk about a few more: loan servicers and property managers. Two other industries that are heavily reliant on being able to send forms in the event that you either fail to pay or do something. Seems like tech can do a lot of that.
I think the service industry right now, I don't see how any way I look at the property management industry as more of the service industry. There's a lot of technology of like posting a property, getting the photos, doing the listing online and getting applications. There's a lot of that will get automated. And what's going to happen is property management companies are going to lower their management fees from 10%, 8% down to 7, 6, or 5%, because they'll be able to have a race to the bottom on those costs, is my personal opinion. However, the part of the property management that they bring to the table that will be hard to remove or replace is when my carpet needs to be replaced or my the property needs to be turned over. Now, man, I hope somebody in the future, might be 30 years down the road, figures out how to get a contractor to show up on time that's just a robot. And it's not even, I don't have anything against the contractors. I just think contractors attract a very disorganized type of demographic, because what they're doing is they're constantly being bid against. Homeowners don't know what things really cost. So they're bidding 5-6 times beating these contractors up, and the contractor has no choice except for to make it up in volume. So if you make it up in volume, guess what you're doing? You're doing way more jobs than you can probably physically handle. So I think that's something, again, at the caboose. I don't think that's going to get solved for a long time, but the property management, the front end of it, that's ripe for disruption as well. I don't want to be doom and gloom, but I am fearful, because when they talk about, oh, well, the fax machine came and the email came and internet came and it removed a lot of people's jobs, like phone operators lost their jobs. I'm like, yeah, but it created a lot more software developers. It created a lot more this. There was more jobs created during that time than were destroyed. I don't think it's going to be the same way. I think personally, I don't know this for a fact, and I haven't done enough research, but I think we're headed to a UBI, a universal basic income, that the government's going to have to pay a lot of people just to sit at home and live their lives, because I think a lot of jobs are going to be disrupted, and the people who understand how to utilize this technology, property management companies and the like, they'll rise to the top and become ultra wealthy. And the 99% that are like, I don't want to do that much work, they're going to be basically on UBI.
All right, Pace, we have a few questions. Maya, I'm going to turn it over to you. Give us some of those.
Sure. So we do have a few questions that we can circle back to today. Thank you, everyone, for sharing your thoughts. Well, I'll read them off as is, and I will leave it to you guys to interpret them amongst yourselves. So starting with the first question, will AI be used primarily for scripts based on what has worked before on closed transactions?
That's not, I wouldn't really call that AI. Again, that's modeling, right? So what they're doing is if in the past this has succeeded, then I want you to reply with this. What AI does is predicts what the seller is going to say next before the seller even says it. Identifying the individual. Guys, I do this funny trick when I go to Bigger Pockets conference, where I'll stand in line and people will come up to me, and without them saying anything other than, hi, my name is blank, I can say how many children they have, whether they're married, they're not married, or divorced. I can tell you what part of the country you came from and where you currently live. I can identify somebody that's like, I was born in Omaha, Nebraska, but I live in California. And I can tell them that based on how they're dressed, how their feet are positioned, how their tone of their voice went up or down. I can do that as a human being because I talk to so many people on a daily basis. That's not artificial intelligence. That's just gathering a lot of data points. What artificial intelligence is going to do is it's going to look at one shoelace on this person and predict the rest of what they're wearing before they even say a word. And so a true AI, not modeling of, oh, the seller brought up this keyword, so it's going to trigger this thing and go high level, which is the name of the software a lot of people are using. Seller says, I have a problem with why would I let you take over the payments? Then the model goes, okay, hold on, I got to search for the answer. Rather than AI, it does the opposite. They will answer an objection before the objection pops up. That is what AI will do. Hopefully that makes sense.
It does. Thank you. So we'll move on to, this goes back to calls with AI.
Mm-hmm.
If the AI starts the first contact on a real estate deal, how does it progress when you need to have a follow-up call? How does the handoff from AI voice to the closer go?
Okay, this is so great because I do live calls a lot for my community. I mean, in fact, I'm doing live calls today from 4 to 7. And what I'll do is I'll just call, but I always identify what I want the follow-up to be based on the individual. I don't use scripts. Okay. Ask yourself this question, whoever's listening to this, especially if you're a female. If you're a female in a traditional relationship, would you have loved going on your first date with your husband if you knew that everything was scripted? No. The answer is hell no. You don't want to have a scripted conversation. So why would I want to have a scripted conversation with anybody? What AI will do is AI will, all based on that human profile, it will identify what that next follow-up opening line will be based on that individual person, not off of a script. So I'll give you a good example. So let's say that it's, 2 weeks before the Super Bowl, and I call somebody in, Detroit. AI will bring up like, hey, did you watch are you excited for the Super Bowl? Blah, 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 blah. And then it will trigger a follow-up for after the Super Bowl, and it will ask the question of, hey, did you love the freaking play that happened at 4 minutes in and and so caught that with one right hand? AI will pull data from video and know what to utilize in that conversation to have true rapport with that person. So that's like, wow, this person remembered that we talked about football in the previous conversation, and their follow-up line was about football based on the game that I was telling the AI that I was going to play. There's no script involved there. It is predicting exactly what it's going to say to you. It is crazy.
Any other questions, Maya?
Yeah, one last question. This one for all of you. Whatever you think. Do you think we can use AI to buy businesses?
Yes, 100%. So here's the biggest challenge in the business world, right? So in real estate, so we buy businesses creatively as well. And one of the biggest challenges you're going to have with businesses versus real estate is real estate. If I want to find foreclosures or people in divorce, I want to find that. Guys, there's 1,000, literally maybe even more than 1,000 websites I can go to go get lists of these people that are basically public data, right? This person's in foreclosure. Everybody knows about it. This person's going through divorce. We all know about it. This person has a code violation on their property. It's all boarded up. We know about it. Guys, it's not like that in the business world. It is very challenging to find motivated business owners. And so I think the first thing that's going to come out with AI in business purchasing is how to scrape the country's LLC data, how to aggregate that, and then how to bucket that into motivated sellers. So it'll say, oh, this person's owned this LLC for 25 years, and this LLC has ownership in such and such and such based on public record. They've owned this body shop for 25 years. Okay, well, that's probably a tired landlord, somebody who's owned that business for over 25 years. That doesn't currently exist, at least that I've seen. And so the first thing that's got to be accomplished in the business buying world is aggregating all the businesses together in one data set, and then have a website that somebody can go to and go, I want to buy all the car washes in the Western United States that have been owned for over 10 years by the same owner. That does not currently exist.
I'm curious, is this an area you focus on in social media? I've heard it referred to as the silver tsunami. So there's a glut of we don't know how much it is, but all of these small businesses where the owners they're aging out. And the choice is either sell and retire or close up shop because I'm just too old. It's time to move on. And they may not actively be looking, but the suggestion is in the coming years and decade, there's a huge amount of these. And it seems like really just a big opportunity for AI to do just what you were talking about.
Everything breaks down into phases of life, right? Like Andy, we were just talking to Sean earlier at the beginning of the show. I don't know if that was recorded or not, is that he's currently not in Arizona. I don't want to be in Arizona anymore during 5 months out of the year. There's a phase in my life where I woke up one day as a 40-year-old man. I'm like, why have I been dealing with this for so long? It's like, I don't really grow up. I just get more logical maybe, or maybe more cranky is maybe what it is. And I remember as a contractor, when I used to be a contractor roughly 15 years ago, I was talking to my now wife, Laura, and I said, why is your dad, who's also a contractor, I go, why is your dad such a jerk? And why is he so terse? He's a loving man, but he can be really like, and she goes, because he's been a contractor for a long time and he just got to a point where he's just fed up with certain things. And I go, oh yeah, I won't be like that. 6 years later, I was identical to him. I was answering the same way. I was super terse. I was just fed up with the stuff. And so there's phases of business ownership, just like there's phases of real estate. People get sick and tired of managing tenants that never scaled to a point where they had asset managers and a team underneath the asset managers, et cetera. This is an interesting data point. 92% of businesses in the world will never hit $1 million a year in revenue. Why is that? Because they never adopted the skill of about 1,000 things, but really delegating and building teams and building a system. They rely entirely on themselves. So if 92% of business owners are relying on themselves, right? The old adage of if it's meant to be done, I got to do it myself. If I want it done right, I got to do it myself type of thing. Is 92% of human beings on the planet think that way? And one day you just wake up and you go, I'm not willing to deal with this anymore. So that silver tsunami you're talking about is a real thing. It's the people are like, I did it. I put in my time. I'm done. And when they sell their business, guess what's happening? It's such a fragmented exit. There's no actual marketplace for this. There's biz, buy, sell. There's this, that, and the other. But it's a bunch of business brokers that don't understand how businesses are actually ran, that are trying to find people to buy these businesses. And there's 85 websites that are all fragmented and you don't know which one to go to. There will come a day of reckoning where somebody comes along, creates one uniform marketplace like the MLS for businesses. And when people actually get educated that buying a business is actually better than starting one. So it's a couple of years away, but it's definitely going to happen. Silver tsunami is not just a real thing. It is truly one of the things that we focus on. We have a plumbing company right now that we're negotiating. And the guy, I go, why do you want to sell? He goes, I'm tired. That was his answer. And I go, okay, got it. Because I've been through these a lot. Sean's been through these a lot. I've done a lot of transactions with Sean, and you just get sellers that get to a point where they go, I got a whole portfolio of houses. I have been replacing the toilets and the light bulbs myself for the last 15 years. Yes, I'll sell to you on seller finance, right? So yeah, silver tsunami is a real thing.
So Pace, you mentioned how you wished AI could be used in the subto community. Are there ways you guys that you're currently using AI that's really working in subto deals?
Mostly transaction, or mostly lead generation, getting people in front of more sellers to have more conversations. And then the other thing that we're using internally in the community is that 3.5 years of all the Zooms that we do on a weekly basis, which is about 30 Zooms a week times 3.5 years. That's not YouTube content. It's not out on the open market. And so in order for, I've done 100 Zooms with Sean in there about going through new contracts or a new strategy or a new this, thousands of Zooms on my own. And so we now have plugins where you can go into our community and go, what would Pace say to this question I have? And it will actually spit out the answer based on how I speak and actual problems that we have. So that helps in the education department. But really the main thing that people need, the number one thing that people need is lead generation, because again, it's that the heaviest weight ever is just getting started, that first rep, and people will stare at the weight of just picking up the phone longer than they'll do anything else. And so lead generation is where most people are focusing, because it truly is the hardest thing. If all we had to do, Andy and Sean, same thing with you guys, if you never had to prospect for your clients and all you did was answer phone calls from people that were motivated and actually vetted, you'd go, wow, what am I going to do with the other 20 hours a week? I have to deal with knuckleheads that are just kicking tires. So then I could focus on other things, like, improving my business, hiring more people, training the people that I hired 4 months ago that I haven't gotten to a point where I can now sit down and train them or tell them why I answered this that way and all of those things, right? Think about Mayu, right? Mayu did not come trained. She's obviously very smart, but somebody sat down with her and go, let's script this. Let's do this. There's dozens and dozens of hours that have gone into her craft to be as good as she currently is, which is amazing. And when I watch Mayu, I'm like, she's gangster. But somebody had to train her, right? So if you can remove the lead generation, it will allow you to focus on all the other important things while AI catches up. I think in 24 months, the next wave, the thing that's going to happen before contracts happen is I think AI is going to get to a point where it can start a conversation and it can get all the way to overcoming 99% of objections and send the contract for them to review without a human being involved whatsoever. Load it in a DocuSign, load it into whatever, send it over so that it can get feedback or a counter offer or whatever else. And then at that point, somebody actually gets involved. Like, oh, imagine if I only got involved when a seller says, hey, I like everything on this contract except for these 3 things. Can we get on a phone call and discuss it? And that was the only phone call you had to take. We're 2 years away from that.
Wild. Yeah. Well, Pace, thank you so much for being with us. We know you're a busy guy. We always appreciate you coming on. For the few listeners that just crawled out from under a rock and don't know who Pace Morby is, why don't you tell them how they can find you?
Guys, listen to Collective the Creative Collective with these guys later this afternoon. What time is it again? It's 3
p.m. Arizona time.
Guys, just so you know, anybody else that goes off other time zones, y'all are knuckleheads. Arizona is the only state besides Hawaii that does not change our time zone. Everybody else changes our time zone. Look up Arizona time zone, 3 p.m. Listen to these guys. They're going to be talking about creative finance this afternoon at 3 p.m. If you want to learn more about what I do, you can buy my book on Amazon. It's like a $17 book from Bigger Pockets, and it's currently the #1 book Bigger Pockets has ever sold. I think the reason why is because I decided to put a video companion guide in the back of the book that's like 18 hours explaining the book and breaking it down with whiteboard videos. It's basically like a $10,000 course all wrapped up in a $17 book. So if you want to learn more about what I do, you can go buy that book and let Bigger Pockets make $16 and I'll make a dollar.
Good stuff. Pace, thanks so much for being with us. We'll do it again.
Hey, you guys are amazing. True big fans of you guys. I'm so grateful to have Sean as my friend and my attorney. Mayu, I'm going to tell you right now, you're doing a phenomenal job. Keep killing the game.
All right. Thank you. With that, everybody, be with us, the Creative Finance Collective, and next week. We'll see you next week.